Hey, Sarah, we're here. We're back in the studio.
Yes, we are. Stay tuned, listeners, for all new episodes for season 3 coming October 2025. This is Trustworthy. Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mary Beth. Join us for conversations in community,
Established by a trustworthy God. Well, hello there, Mary Beth.
Hello, Sarah. Are we really here again?
Yes, we are in the Trustworthy Podcast studio, recording our first episode of season 3.
Hooray.
Wow, season 3.
It's been a long time coming.
It has been a long time coming, and I am just sort of amazed and humbled that we are sitting here to record the start of season 3.
Yeah. It's gone quickly and slowly all at the same time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It really does. Yeah.
But I'm happy to be back.
Oh, well, good. I'm happy to be here with you.
What should we talk about on this very first episode of season 3?
Oh, that's a great question. We're going to be focusing this season a little more on community and conversations. So the first thing we want to talk about is what culture breeds community.
We did an episode almost a year ago, back in November of 2024, that focused a lot on community and the nuts and bolts of why it's important, how you build it, what it can look like in our lives. So building off of those ideas, Sarah and I have been talking about what does it take to actually build community, and how does culture play into that, and what role do we have in influencing and shaping culture? And that's what we're aiming to discuss today. In a time where things are happening in our broader culture that we just can't ignore.
I think I'll start by saying that there is more that unites us than divides us. But we forget that. And I spent a good amount of time this summer getting to know America. The places, the people, the history, the stories. Wow, it was amazing and changed me. We live in the United States. The United States was founded by people who believed that there was a better way to live. A way to live that could be filled with freedom of choice in religion and types of government, the way they built their communities, the way they took care of one another. That America still exists. It's hard to find. You actually have to look for it. You can't stay in your house and have that information come in, because we're getting nothing but static. Nothing but static on Channel Z, not biscotti. But sadly, and I believe that this breaks the heart of our dear Heavenly Father as well, we spend more time thinking about how we're different and coming up with reasons to dislike, and can I even use the word hate, the other human beings that God created in His image. And that culture is a darn hard place to build community, Mary Beth.
Yeah, it's never promised to believers in Scripture that this would be easy. We've learned from Jesus himself that going against the religious rulers of the day can cost you your life. All in God's plan, of course. But we also are taught that the wisdom of God is foolishness to the world. And particularly as followers of Christ, we are constantly swimming upstream. Does that mean that we cannot engage with the culture around us? Of course not. We are also called to engage with the culture around us because there is good in it and there's good in God's design. So that's what we're trying to wade into a little bit today. Looking back at our conversation on community, we can do things for our individual life that build our own community and make our lives better and fruitful. But if we're operating just from that perspective of how do I make this work for me? How do I build community for me that helps me and how can I engage? We're missing the broader picture of, but what is the culture around me and how are we helping the culture around us value community, value people of different points of view coming together, valuing human life, valuing those who are different from us but live in the same place that we do. There are all these things that we can have good influences on in the culture around us. And so those are the kind of the big ideas we've been tossing around and that we want to get into a little bit.
One of our favorite places to start is with definitions. We love the words. In my high school graduation gift, Random House Dictionary, I better not say what year. The definition of culture that we're going to use for our discussion today is the sum total of ways of living built up by a group of human beings and transmitted from one generation to another. The behaviors and beliefs characteristic of a particular social, ethnic, or age group. So as I said earlier, there's more that unites us than divides us. We all are created in the image of God. We are built to be in relationship with one another. So what things do you have in common with any single person that you come across? Well, we all need to eat. We all need to breathe. Typically, you're in the same geographical area. If you are a sports fan, you can discuss with someone whether they like or dislike the sports team. Keep it light.
You raise this point that there can be a variety of cultures existing at one time in your life. The town and the area where we live might be one culture. You mentioned sports. There are sports teams and cultures and customs and practices that go on with those things. And there is a little push and pull, right? As believers within culture, how is our view different from other people that share the culture with us or that we share the culture with? Whatever the right grammar should be there. We want to be positively shaping culture around us without robbing it of its good and good identity. But if we want to build culture that values community, what does that look like?
I like to think of this idea of coattails. You've heard the phrase, you grabbed onto the coattails of so-and-so and took the ride to the top. Well, if we think of these little coattails in our culture around us, these would be things that are in alignment with what God's word has said, what our role is as believers. But we can look for these coattails and we can jump on those and help those efforts. So these could be charitable organizations in our community. These could be maybe a local project to build a trail at the park. That would be building community. It would bring folks closer to nature, which is, of course, what God has created for us to enjoy and have dominion over.
Let's think for a minute about those examples you're kind of getting into. What do we think are the characteristics of types of cultures, existing cultures, subcultures, whatever you want to call them, that do create strong community And what is it about those cultures that creates community?
It's a great question.
I think of college football because it's the fall, and I'm a big University of Georgia fan and alum. So immediately what comes to mind is there's a visible common identity. You're wearing the jerseys, the shirts, the colors, whatever of the teams. And you can immediately recognize there's a hilarious commercial on TV right now for, I think it's some kind of insurance, where the guy's boss puts down a University of Georgia mug in a big conference room meeting. And he's like, oh, go dogs. And he starts barking, doing the Georgia bark. And it's really awkward and hilarious. The commercial's really funny. But it's a great example of, she puts down that mug that has the University of Georgia logo on it, and it's immediate recognition.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole realm of understanding that comes down when she puts down that mug. So it could be things like that there's recognition, there's some physical attribute to college football teams. There's the activity of going to games. There's what you're wearing, what you're doing, the chants you're saying, the songs you know. What's another example, Sarah, of a culture like that?
Well, we live in the greater Philadelphia area. I have a question for you, Mary Beth. Jeet yet? We could go grab a hoagie.
Yeah.
So I think slang terms. Also, too, I'm a mountain biker. So I can say things like, whew, there was no good line. It was totally gnarly. But boy, I just decided to send it. And people that maybe know what I'm talking about would be like, oh, yeah. And then somebody else will look at me like, what are you talking about? When I got into mountain biking, I started realizing that there were certain clothing that people were wearing. And I'm like, oh, look at them. They're all flaunting their special clothing. And then suddenly I realized, oh, right. Yeah, those shorts are really important. They're extra long.
Very functional.
Very functional. They won't get caught in the brambles. They're comfortable. I'm like, yeah, I need those too. So there's definitely physical attributes. I also think about mindset as well. And this can sort of come out when you are in a culture with someone. Let's say that you are a horseback rider, okay? And you're in the horse community, which is another big community we have in our area here. And let's say you are getting set up for an event, maybe a steeplechase event or something, and you've forgotten. And again, this is going to show my complete ignorance when it comes to the horse world. But let's say you've forgotten a very specific type of bridle, and you could just look at your friend and hold up the wrong thing, and with a shocked look on your face, and they'd be like, oh no, I got you. I have an extra one. I think there's also like this shared mindset when it comes to that. Going back to the trail building idea, when everyone's there, whether they're going to be riding a bike on the trail or hiking on the trail, everyone understands, yeah, there's going to be some branches or trees or things that are going to have to come out of this trail so that we can make it passable. It's going to have a great cascading effect in our community. So everybody's there and they're getting out the loppers and they're chopping the vines and they're raking the path. And you don't need to say to someone, oh, go clear that branch, because they already know. So it's a shared mindset.
Yeah. And a sense of purpose, a common goal.
Yeah. As we talk about these sort of hallmarks of different culture that builds community, you know when you got it, when the community that's built transcends time and space. I spent some time, as I mentioned, getting to know our country this summer. And part of it was driving the old Route 66 from Chicago to LA. After we were done, and in the ensuing time that we've been home, if I happen to mention that trip or something related to that trip, I have run into a couple people that have done that trip, and there's this instant connection, and they can say, oh, did you see the corner in Winslow, Arizona? That was one conversation I had recently. Or did you stop at that restored gas station that's a museum now? And there's this whole understanding between us wow, we've had this experience where we saw small town America. We saw the ways that people used to spend their time taking days and days to travel across the country. Just that feeling that you get and that depth of knowledge that is gained rather than just flying over an airplane. There will be listeners for this particular episode of this podcast. When I mention those things, they will say yes, and we will have a connection that transcends time and space.
The other common thread I'm hearing too is that culture involves the whole person. You are physically engaged. You're driving in a car down Route 66. You're attending a football game. You're pedaling on your bike. This is where real culture and community happen, is when you are engaging your physical body in all of these ways and forming these connections mentally, emotionally, to whatever is happening. You're creating memories. You're repeating patterns. It's a whole person experience. And as a quick aside, that's why the internet is not real life. That is why internet communities can never substitute for real in-person culture and community. Culture in the physical world cannot happen if everyone is isolated and behind a screen. Or as the kids would say, touch grass.
Touch grass. I hadn't heard that before, but it's becoming more common. I was thinking the same thing. And as we were doing research for this podcast, we ran across an interesting concept from anthropologist Robin Dunbar. He discusses something called the Dunbar's number. And his idea is that you cannot know more than 150 people. Getting additional friends on your Facebook or follows on your Instagram or whatever it may be does not constitute actual community. Because of cognitive limits and also the amount of time that is required to invest in meaningful relationships, 150, give or take, is about the upper limit. And apparently there is some difference between male and female genders
in terms of capacity.
And he did not deign to mention in his video which one was which, so therefore neither will I. Anyway, the point of all of this is that we are limited in how many relationships that we can sustain. And we've mentioned this several times. You're the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Those 5 important relationships, of course, would receive your most time investment. But then as you go further out in your community, you would have more acquaintances and more friends that you would also invest time. Hey, listeners, we've been hearing from a lot of you how much you're enjoying our podcast.
We'd appreciate it if you would follow and subscribe on whatever streaming service you use so that more people can find out about Trustworthy.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for the encouragement. Talk to you soon.
Which brings up the point, how do we structure our lives for that cultural influence to happen? We're coming from the hypothesis that community is good, everybody needs and wants it. And so how do we then help build that culture? How do we leave room in our lives for a culture to flourish that will create that community that everyone's looking for?
It's an excellent question. And we did spend some time thinking about this. I think the first answer is actually in the question. How do we leave room? Well, we leave room. We leave margin. We leave margin in our schedule, our physical calendar schedule. We also leave margin in our intellectual space.
What does that mean, Sarah?
It is important, and I'm going to use a buzzword here. It's important to have an open mindset versus a closed mindset. We hear that a lot, especially in educational circles, but it is true. If we are open to new possibilities and new connections, then we will have new possibilities and new connections. If we approach the world with our mind already closed, thinking, oh, I don't have time in my life, I don't have room in my life, then that's exactly the result that we're going to get.
Or I don't want to put in the effort to
that's a good
get
one.
to know somebody who is different from me. Or because that is the flip side, I think, of culture, is we can latch on so tightly to something that is exactly what we want it to be that we don't allow space for something that might be a little bit different.
And I think that this sort of ties back to the conversation we had at the beginning about our culture and otherizing people. And the internet is famous for being an echo chamber. If you want more of what you are interested in, just hop on your smartphone or your computer and do a little scrolling, and soon you will be getting exactly what you're looking for and nothing else.
It's just like good old Daniel Tiger taught me on PBS with my young boys. You got to try new food because it might taste good.
That's right. Yeah, your taste buds do change as you age.
It's true.
So, recognizing those coattails that I mentioned earlier in the culture around us is another way that we can help build community. For example, there is a movement called Wait Until 8th. And I'm not sure who started it, where it started, if it was faith-based, if it's not. But it came to me as a petition that I signed for our school, and that I would wait until the end of 8th grade to give my child a smartphone. And I signed it, and we did. And the whole premise of this is that parents cave to their kids because they think they're the only ones, but they're not the only ones. That was an interesting coattail that I felt very compelled to grab onto.
Yeah. And I'll just add that particular example. It is by design meant to encourage a public facing community that says, hey, we're doing this. Join us. You're not alone. This is what we want for our kids. It's what we want for their friends as well. I too have signed the pledge for my boys. And if you look up articles on this particular topic about smartphones and social media for kids, it is one of the few topics in our country right now that is bridging political divides and all these other things. And so I think that's a great example of people you might not, other parents in your community that you might not have a lot of values in common with. Start with this issue, build community there, find common ground. Who knows what other conversations that can lead to.
It is robbing our children of their childhood. Nobody wants that.
Right.
So, Mary Beth, what are some other things that we can do to leave room in our lives or allow this culture to flourish?
I was thinking when you mentioned recognizing how God is at work in culture, it's this mentality of not going out there as a crusader and saying, I'm going to change everything around me. It's seeing where God is already working and getting involved there. We had a guest on last season, Jessica Zubrod, whose family is super involved with our local community. I think they're a great example of her husband helps run a company that invests in the community in buying buildings and land and supporting businesses and nonprofits that are turning back into the community for good. So I think of things like that. How are we supporting those businesses? How are we getting engaged? How are we volunteering? How are we contributing to things that are already happening, that are already at work to bring light and goodness into our culture and to help us get to know our neighbors better? I think that's a great example. Another way to think about it is identity. A lot of times people are searching for identity, and we need to remember that identity is not lost in community, but it is forged there. We are bringing everything from our past into our present. And so what can we choose to let go of? What can we choose to maybe leave behind that isn't good for our current community and culture? And how are we I mean, this all kind of ties together. How are we open to being changed by this community? How are we 10 years from now different than who we are today in ways that matter?
Mm-hmm.
And how are we taking those things with us that are the core of who we are, that are good and that don't need to change?
Yeah. And I just want to just encourage or remind here, it's about discernment and being sure that we are looking for God's work, looking for the ways that God is showing up in the culture, that if we are going to surround ourselves with a community that's going to change us, that it would be one that forms us more fully into a disciple of Jesus Christ. And again, we did a great episode last season about the community of believers, and there's a lot of good information there. I also had another thought about this, Mary Beth. When we are looking to encourage a culture that will allow community to thrive, we have to remember, specifically for followers of Christ, we are kingdom builders, not crusaders. So often we set out on a crusade. And when I say the word crusade, I'm thinking specifically of the Crusades in capital letters, where Christians thought it would be a great idea to go out and bring the word by killing lots of people. I'm not going to dive into all the historical ramifications of that, but I just want us to have a kingdom building approach as opposed to a slash and burn. It's more about stewardship, I think.
That's right. We were given a command in the Garden of Eden to be fruitful, to multiply. We see in Jesus' prayers that he values the city, that he values people, he values culture. And these are all good things. And we are here to steward those, like you're saying. I think it's also important to keep in mind, this is playing the long game. Culture is not built overnight. It's a slow and steady process. You know, when I moved here to Pennsylvania, I brought a lot of my expectations of culture from places where I used to live. And I've had to learn how things are different here. And I've been here years and I'm still learning. And that's probably going to be a process as long as I live here. And so that's not a bad thing. It's being willing to commit to something for the long haul, and also recognizing that this is the process of living your day-to-day life, being faithful in the small things, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, and all these other things we've been talking about.
And it does take work. As Mary Beth said earlier, Jesus never said we were going to have an easy life. I think he said some things along the lines of, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world.
But then when you have those moments of connection, like you talked about your trip this summer, when I encounter people who are believers that I might not have a whole lot else in common with, other than we both live in this general geographic area. But once we figure out we have that connection, it changes the whole dynamic. This happened with one of the bus drivers of my boys' school bus. She was very friendly, would always chat for a few seconds when she was picking them up in the mornings. Saw her out in town one time on a Sunday. We were out to eat after church. She said, "Oh, what are y'all up to?" I said, "We just came from church." She said, "I just came from church." And it broke down this whole, I mean, not that we intentionally had a barrier, but it opened up this whole other level of our relationship and helped me as a mom to know that somebody who knows the Lord is driving my kids on the bus. It's just a small example of that connection, especially among believers. There's nothing else like it in the world. And that's the culture that we want to be fostering.
Yeah. I had a similar thing happen to me with mountain biking. Just one of my families was always sweet. And then I ran into the mom at Bible study. We're like, "Oh, hey." And the whole thing changed. And now I know that they're praying for our team. How sweet it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be hard, but there are moments where God helps us enjoy it and gives us moments of blessing and grace as we fight the good fight to build this culture.
And I would encourage you, dear listeners, to keep your heart and your eyes open for those moments of community. I tend sometimes to get so caught up in the doing that I forget to just be. Back to the Mary and Martha. As I'm working with a group of people, am I so focused on the program that I am forgetting to just enjoy the connection? You make a difference when you're in the room. You can be a difference for good or not.
So Sarah, looking ahead, we're looking to continue this idea of what has it looked like in our lives, maybe, to experience this with other people. Do you want to tease the people about what might be coming ahead in some future episodes?
Oh, yes. We intend to have some conversations with folks that we have created community with, that we met within a culture that allowed those relationships to flourish. So stay tuned for that.
Any closing thoughts, Sarah?
We want to keep an open mindset, and we also want to follow the example that Jesus gave us in enjoying and connecting with the people that he was with. And it didn't always look like maybe other people thought it should, but it was good.
And trust that God is at work. He is right now at work, building and refining people, cultures, and communities. So if you are doing those things that we mentioned, leaving space in your schedule, having that open mind, seeking him with your heart, soul, and mind, then you'll be able to see where he is working and be able to jump in and get engaged in building culture that way.
On that note, listeners, until next time, let's be kingdom builders in this culture marathon.
And remember the words of Hebrews 10:24 and 25. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
Amen.
Hey y'all, Mary Beth here. Sarah and I are so glad that you chose to listen to our podcast. And while we think that we're awesome friends to have, we just wanted to clarify that we are not mental health professionals and want you to know that this podcast should not take the place of any paid professional advice.